I used to live in the city, and for the longest time, the urban lifestyle was exactly what I thought I wanted. I won't go into details, but after a deeply traumatic experience, even the smallest noises became unbearable. I started to hate sound altogether. My psychiatrist eventually diagnosed me with a rare condition called phonophobia. Imagine that pins and needle sensation when your foot falls asleep. Except instead of fading away, it stayed in my chest all the time, like my body was bracing for something that never came. Every honking car, every slammed door, it all felt like a shock to my nervous system. I knew I couldn't live like that anymore. About 3 years ago, I found a cabin tucked away deep in the Pacific Northwest. I won't share the exact spot for reasons you'll understand soon, but I can say it was in Oregon. It seemed perfect. Almost no neighbors, no traffic, barely any cell service. What really convinced me was the silence. For the first time in months, I thought I might actually feel safe. The cabin itself was small but inviting, exactly as the listing described. It was built to last, with thick wooden beams and a solid stone fireplace. When I first walked inside, it smelled like pine and old books, an earthy, comforting scent that reminded me of those cozy lodge-style bed and breakfasts you find near ski towns. My closest neighbor was about a 10-minute walk down a narrow dirt trail. Though I didn't meet her right away, those first few days, I just let the quiet sink in. I'd wake up to the sound of birds instead of sirens, and at night, the only thing I heard was the wind moving through the trees. It felt like the world had finally pressed pause, and I could breathe again, since I worked entirely from my laptop. I didn't have much reason to connect with anyone else anyway, but about a week after I settled in, there was a knock at the door. With no doorbell, I realized this was something I'd have to get used to. When I opened it, I finally met my neighbor. She was a woman, maybe in her late 50s, holding a basket of homemade preserves like she had stepped right out of a Hallmark movie. She introduced herself as Michelle and explained she lived about 10 minutes down the trail. It didn't sound far, but with how dense the woods were, you could easily lose your way just looking for firewood. She looked like she was in her late 60s, with long, silvery gray hair that seemed almost too long for her age and piercing blue eyes that made me feel like she could see straight through me. She wasn't rude exactly, more like blunt. She welcomed me to the woods and pushed the basket toward me like she expected me to take it. Honestly, I didn't have much of a choice. She was practically pressing it into my hands. On the surface, it seemed like a kind gesture, but something about her energy felt off. I grabbed it without thinking, though I'd never been greeted like that by a neighbor before. It wasn't anything outrageous, just unusual. I thanked her, and she looked at me as if she expected more, but I couldn't think of what else to say. So I just smiled. She kept staring, and the longer it went on, the more convinced I became that this woman didn't interact with people very often. Finally, she spoke. Her exact words are burned into my memory. Always keep your lanterns full, your windows shut tight, and your wits sharper than your axe. It wasn't something a normal person would say to a new neighbor. It sounded rehearsed, like something out of an old rule book, or worse, like a warning. I nodded politely, forced another smile, and stepped back inside. After closing the door, I stood there listening, waiting for the sound of her footsteps fading down the trail. But she didn't move, not for at least 45 seconds. That pause was easily the strangest part of the entire exchange. Still, despite the weirdness, I appreciated her in a way. She came across as reclusive but not unkind, the type who would help if asked, but would never go out of her way to pry. I decided it was reassuring to know someone was nearby, even if I didn't plan on relying on her. I didn't even bother checking what was in the basket. I just set it down in the living room and forgot about it. That night, a thunderstorm rolled in, rare for Oregon but not impossible. The sky cracked open with heavy rain and deep rumbles that shook the cabin. I lit a few candles and curled up on the couch with a book, the power flickering every few minutes. Some people would probably find that kind of isolation terrifying, but for me, in that moment, it was strangely comforting that my brain wasn't rattled by the natural sound of thunder. Strangely, the storm felt almost soothing at first, but that calm didn't last. A few hours after it started, there was a knock at the door that nearly made me jump out of my skin. Knock isn't the right word. It was more like a hard, frantic banging, loud, aggressive, and totally out of place in the rain. Whoever it was didn't seem to care that it was pouring. My heart kicked up, and that awful pins and needles feeling returned in my chest. I hesitated for a second, then grabbed a flashlight and went to the door. I peered through the little glass pane beside it and saw Michelle, soaked through, hair plastered to her face, clutching a flashlight of her own. She didn't wait for me to open the door. Before I could say hello, she blurted out that she'd seen someone by my woodpile and that I needed to know. I stepped out onto the porch and swept my flashlight into the rain, but all I could see was dark trees and driving water. I asked if she was sure. She nodded, eyes darting toward the woods like she expected someone to appear any second. The whole thing felt unnerving. Her voice was tight, but I couldn't make anything out between the storm and the shadows. Before I could ask more, she warned me to be careful and started back down the trail without waiting for an answer. She walked off like the rain didn't bother her at all. I watched until the beam of her light vanished, then went back inside. The second I shut the door, I realized her story didn't add up. How could she have seen someone near my woodpile from a house 10 minutes away? She have had to be on my property. Why would she be prowling around my place in a thunderstorm? Was she telling the truth? I wasn't going to march over to her cabin in the middle of that storm, but I couldn't just do nothing. I locked every door and window as carefully as I could and double-checked the deadbolt. Feeling that tight, weird edge under my ribs the whole time, I sat in my room as the storm finally started to ease. Even after it quieted down, I felt on edge. A few more hours passed without anything happening, so I decided it was probably safe to try to sleep. I don't remember the exact time, but sometime after midnight, I woke to the sound of a branch snapping right outside my bedroom window. I'm a light sleeper, so I was certain it was a branch, not my imagination. I froze for a few tense seconds, listening. Then I crept to the window, half hoping I wouldn't see anything. At first I didn't, but then I saw her, Michelle. She stood at the edge of the woods, her body angled away from my house. I recognized her because her hair was long and tangled. With only moonlight to help, I couldn't make out many details. When she started to turn toward the house, I ducked down beneath the window so she wouldn't catch me looking. I stayed crouched there forever until I finally forced myself to peek again. She was gone. I didn't know what to think. I had never considered her dangerous, just strange, but now I was having second thoughts. It didn't add up. Why would she warn me earlier she was the one prowling outside? I didn't sleep for hours. I was determined to stay up until sunrise. After a few more tired hours, I started to let my guard down. Then there was a knock at the door. This one wasn't like the earlier banging. It was quiet. I wasn't getting up under any circumstances. Pins and needles ran through me as I inched toward the door. I stole a quick look through the glass and went cold with horror. It wasn't Michelle. It was a burly, bald man with a thick beard. I had to fight every instinct not to scream. The situation jumped from bad to terrifying. As quietly as I could, I backed into the bathroom, locked the door, and called the police, and I was on the phone with them then I started hearing heavy banging at the front door, like someone was smashing with a blunt object. The 911 operator told me help was on the way and to stay on the line. I sat there more terrified than I've ever been. After a few agonizing minutes, the door finally gave way and crashed open. I honestly thought I was going to die. Whoever it was began wrecking the cabin, glass shattering with splintering. Every hit sounded like it was coming from the living room. I didn't make a sound. For some reason, he never seemed to search the rest of the house. I never heard footsteps move past the living room. Eventually, the noise stopped and an eerie silence settled in. I was trembling and fighting off a panic attack the whole time. To my surprise, the police arrived fairly quickly, but not fast enough to catch him in the act. He was already gone. I begged the officers to do a proper search, but their effort fell half-hearted. They did a quick sweep around the property and then refused to comb the woods, saying it was too thick and any search would be pointless. I lost when they said that. I demanded they check Michelle's place at least. Reluctantly, they agreed to come with me. When we reached her cabin, I couldn't believe my eyes. The place was abandoned. The officers confirmed no one had lived there for decades. I told them there might be squatters, but they refused to search the building. insisting there were no clear signs of habitation, and it would be a waste of resources. They basically told me living out here was my problem and left. I felt furious and helpless. I moved out cabin soon after, but not before spending one last terrifying night there. Nothing else happened, and life has been mostly normal since, but I still think about it all the time. Some friends who lean superstitious suggested Michelle might have been a spirit trying to warn me. I don't buy the paranormal angle. It's more likely there were two people, Michelle and that man, squatting in the old place. I still can't figure out why they targeted me, or why Michelle would warn me if she planned to break in. Maybe I'll never know.